good morning. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us once again. Today is story day.
What's the story?
What?
What is the story?
Well, let's find out.
Once upon a time, when the land was still fresh, before tall buildings, massive towers, and expensive houses, there were castles. And in one of these castles, there just happened to be a princess. Now, this princess wasn't supposed to be in this castle. There was another castle she belonged to, in a kingdom that was set to be doomed without her prompt return. The evil responsible for her current condition stood in his chambers, plotting more evil shit, as he thought about all the evil shit he had done in the past. The chambers in which he thought these thoughts was directly above the dungeon, which just so happened to serve as the princess's quarters. Why and how she ended up where she was is an incredibly tragic lineup of twisted situations, a story of its own for another time. This is the tale of a rescue, which took place 2 years later, which was still a very long time ago. In the kingdom of Negon, there was much stress and chaos, which all unfolded due to the princess's absence. The king fell into a great depression in regards to the disappearance of his beloved daughter. He became unable to rule his kingdom. The town became reckless and overruled by criminals and thieves. But without the return of the princess, the king was unable to tend to these matters. One of the peoples of the village had most recently entered a fit of rage. He was a lonely, peaceful man, never caused any foul, and in return, foul never crossed him. That was, of course, up until that time. His name was Chester, and all he ever wanted to do was sit down. He spent his entire life standing. It's what everybody did, because nothing had been designed to sit down on. The crime was rampant. Every time he turned around, something else had been stolen. After putting up with the ridiculousness of it all for as long as it took him to snap, he headed for the castle to speak to the king. Upon his arrival, it was explained to him why the king was unable to tend to the matters. Chester agreed to go find the princess and bring her back to him. It was a long and treacherous path. Many demons and colored folk traveled the path that led to where the princess was being held. But Chester had dedication, not just because he wanted the princess returned to his village, but because they showed him a picture of the princess before he left so he would know who to look for, and she was fucking hot. And he knew if he rescued her, she would definitely let him hit it, and he wanted to tap that ass like a maple tree. When he finally got to the castle, he thought back on his adventure and how proud he was. He kicked a lot of ass. He didn't wait long outside the doors before they opened up. The master of the castle had become curious as to who had traveled to see him. Chester was brought into the master's lairs. "Who are you?" asked Chester. "I am the master. I ask the questions," the master responded. "Do you have the princess?" Chester asked. "I do not," said the master. "Are you lying?" asked Chester. Yes! The master attacked Chester, but Chester was much stronger and was successful in beating the master. The master died, and Chester went into the dungeon to bring out the princess. She didn't look as good as she did in the picture, because the picture was just a painting, so he had to use his imagination for a lot of it, and his imagination gave her a little bit too much credit in regards to the good looks. But he still wanted to bang, yet she only wanted to be friends. So the princess was returned to the king fixed the kingdom, and Chester went back to being his lonely, humble self. He did, however, finally design something he would be able to sit down on. That was his greatest accomplishment. They even wrote it on the headstone of his grave, right underneath where it said, "Here lies Chester Field."